Oh, where'd we go?
Okay.
There. Oh, there we are. Oh, we're live. Oh, we're live.
Oh, great. Awesome.
All right. Let me welcome you. 1 second here. All right. Hello, Becky. Hello. How are you doing? Yes. John says he sees I dressed up for this one. Yes, I'm coordinating colors for this one. We have a very special Hot Breath Live today. Hot Brethren and Sistren. I'm thinking we may change this name to Comedians on Skype Talking Comedy. I think this is going to be our Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. But today's guest is a Hot Breath alum. This guy has made countless TV appearances. He's toured around the world. He is absolutely hilarious, and he has one of my personal favorite Hot Breath episodes. We recorded up in his hotel room, so go check that on YouTube. If you haven't heard it, don't worry, hotel room made it sound more salacious than it is. But you hear his giggle. Ladies and gentlemen, Hot Brethren and Sistren, welcome to Hot Breath Live. The one and only Jacob Williams, everyone. Welcome, Jacob.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
It's so good to see you too, my friend. How are you doing in these current times?
That's the most applause anyone's ever given me, including live shows with lots of people.
We'll do it again just to make you feel at home.
Yeah. A whole crowd. They say my name and no one, it's only one person clapping even then. So,
I'm glad we're starting this off on a confident note here, Jacob.
yeah. Yeah, like I have a joke in my stand-up about this show I did once where like only one person was in the audience, and it's kind of making fun of how sad that was. But now that would actually be like the biggest crowd that I'd had this month.
That would be a big sold-out audience with the current situation.
Right. Yeah.
How has coronavirus like affected your stand-up? How many gigs did you have canceled? Like what has been your experience with it?
Yeah, it's been pretty tough. A lot of my comedian friends were telling me how all their shows were canceled, and it was like I don't have any shows either, but it's just because no one booked me.
He's on a roll right now.
No, I did have a lot of shows canceled, unfortunately. Yeah, it's been frustrating. It's kind of affected every part of my life. So just trying to figure out what to do next. I might have to start like a webcam show where people tip me to keep my clothes on or something.
Is that a written material? Was that prepared? Did you write that for the show?
Oh, this is all just off the top of the, some of this I might have thought about.
A webcam show where I have to keep all my clothes. That's a good one.
Thanks.
You're going to see that as a meme. Later. Someone's going to steal that and make it a meme sometime.
Yeah, I may have to. Yeah, that's true. Now that I said it, I have to tweet it quickly to get the timestamp, I guess.
How many gigs did you actually have canceled? Because, me personally, I had up through April was canceled for me. So I pretty much had 2 months, and it's going to be more, it's looking like. But what about you?
Yeah, I had this thing in June I was super excited about that got canceled, and then some college gigs, and I had been talking to someone about doing cruise ships. That's definitely off the table now. And I had actually just done this showcase in Denver to kind of book like a whole college tour at the NACA National Convention. So I was really excited about that. And then this kind of put a halt on that whole process. So Yeah, so it's kind of everything I've had has been canceled at the moment, which is kind of scary. So yeah, just kind of trying to figure out how to do things, tell jokes online and things like that for the time being.
Yeah, that's what we just had. Mike Cannon. Are you familiar with Mike Cannon?
Oh yeah, yeah, his new special is great, and yeah, I see him a lot in New York, or before all of this, obviously.
Of
But
course,
yeah,
right?
he's
Yeah,
super funny.
yeah. He was on here Tuesday, and he was talking about how he's been treating this time as just creating a bunch of content and trying to just get as much of himself out there as possible. What have you been doing in that realm?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I've been kind of just trying to keep up routines where I'll write jokes for like an hour a day and things like that. So I've been tweeting out a lot of those, and I've been doing comedy every day in some form online, like usually running jokes past like a few other comedians and things like that. I tried doing a show on Zoom where people could just do a pay what you wish amount to watch the show over
Oh,
Venmo and things like that. And unfortunately, the first one was kind of rough because like I put the link out on my social media, so I guess this happens a lot on Zoom where like anyone can see it, and like a random person came in and like started screen sharing, and like my parents were watching, and they put like porn on the screen and things like that, which I'm pretty sure my parents had never even seen porn before because they're very wholesome. And as far as they know, I hadn't seen it either. So, and the porn they showed was like also like really messed up stuff. It was almost like they saw my browsing history or something and just that. But but no, that was pretty disturbing. So I just had to like kick some people out, and then there was like some background noise when the audio was on. Like some people, I found out later, was my mom was like walking through a yard and there were birds, and so I was telling jokes and then you just hear like bird noises. So I just had to like mute everyone,
oh
and then I was
my
just like telling
gosh.
jokes and people were watching, but I couldn't hear if they were laughing. So it was like doing stand up, I guess, like if you were blindfolded and had earplugs in, and just because I couldn't see anyone's video, no videos were on and no sound was on. So I'm like just delivering the jokes. People are watching them, but I have no idea what the response is, which is like with music that might work, but with comedy, it's like you kind of rely on like knowing whether people are reacting to it. So it was kind of weird, but I'm going to try it again and maybe vet the audience a little more and hopefully do more things like that. So we'll see.
So you couldn't see or hear the audience? You're just talking to your screen?
Yeah, and there is the option to see and hear them, but then once I heard the bird noise, like someone was outside, that can kind of really distract. I mean, it's like if you were doing a comedy show, if you could imagine if you just suddenly heard like nature sounds while you were trying to like set up jokes, and so I just had to like, I just ended up like muting everyone, and so it was almost like it felt like a rehearsal for a stand-up show, even though a bunch of people were watching. I was just like saying my jokes into a void. And people later would message me and they're like, "Oh, we were laughing a lot and all this stuff," but it's like weird to not know that in the moment, you know?
And did
Uh,
you do you set up, you said, a Venmo connected to it? How did you do the payment part?
yeah, the first one was kind of experimental, so I just kind of put that out there as like my Venmo handle was like I think it was like Mr. Jacob Williams, which is the same as like my Twitter and Instagram and stuff. So I just mentioned that there was like an option to donate since I am not doing any actual live shows because they all got canceled. So
Mm-hmm.
so some people did that and that was really nice. But yeah, I really just wanted to test out that form. So I might try to do it again, but with a little more screening of the audience, just to make sure there's not any more crazy hackers or hecklers or whatever.
I know. You've never been heckled with porn before? That sounds like a new one for us comedians.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what the equivalent would. It'd be like if someone somehow like got like a projector and a screen and just started like showing porn while you were on stage and your parents were in the audience at a comedy club. I mean, it's crazy. They'd have to like that would be a lot of work in person to like you'd have to go to the tech booth and like
Right.
bring like one of those like hard drive things to plug in or something. I don't know.
You have to coordinate it with the DJ. It'd be like a music cue, the whole deal.
Right. Yeah. I think because it's online, like there's so much anonymity, so people can just do things like that. That I'm sure they'd never try anything like that in person because you would see them and be like, "That's not cool." But online, somehow, I guess some people think that's funny. I don't know. It's bizarre.
What was the porn, by the way? You said it was
Uh,
disgraceful.
yeah, I was kind of joking. It was pretty. I think it was like pretty vanilla for porn.
Oh, okay.
But there was like some penetration, and it was pretty graphic. Not really what you want your parents to watch when they're tuning in to see you tell jokes.
Did anyone pay besides your parents? Did you actually get some donations?
My parents actually didn't pay, which
Oh,
I thought was interesting. I was like, okay, they that's how much they value my stand up is zero.
uh-huh.
But some other people did, so it wasn't much, but overall, because I was the first one, it was very last minute. I kind of tweeted it out like maybe an hour or less before I started, but a few people did contribute, and I really appreciated that. So it definitely meant a lot to me because it was kind of the only thing I've gotten paid this month. So it was kind of nice, a nice little something. It was nice to see that they appreciated it. And but yeah, my parents. Yeah, sometimes when I talk to them, they'll be like, "Oh, we really liked your friend's joke on social media."
We
I'm like,
liked your friend's joke. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm posting a lot of stuff. Like, did you like any of mine? And my dad's like, I don't really remember it. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad.
But do you
Glad.
do you get residuals from like Wild and Out?
I have gotten those occasionally, and it's not something I wouldn't normally, yeah, rely on it or anything because sometimes it's very small. A lot of times it's just really small amounts. I don't know if it was from Wild Out, but I've gotten ones, for instance, from like Cold Bear or Comedy Central that were sometimes like as little as like 1 penny or
What?
2 pennies. Yeah, like they'll literally mail me a check with the amount of 1 cent, and it's like a full check and postage. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know, it just costs so much more to mail it than like the amount on it.
For
And
sure.
I still deposit it because I need those 2 cents. But yeah, so it's really can be a hit or miss. But yeah, a couple of times I have gotten some residuals, but now yeah, it's just kind of usually a small amount like that. So I'm just
Gotcha.
trying to figure out what to do. I've heard, I think with comedy albums it helps to have those maybe. So I'm hoping I get one of those out soon. I recorded it a while ago, and I want to release that as maybe a special and an album. So I have someone actually now video editing like the album I did with the album audio, and I'm really excited about that because it has like maybe 5 or 6 different camera angles that it cuts around.
Oh, great. Yeah, I remember
And
last time we saw
yeah,
each other here in Atlanta, you said you were about to record your album, but I didn't realize it was
yeah,
also going to be a special.
yeah. I'm kind of self-producing it as a special as well, and I have been procrastinating a lot because I really wanted to make sure everything sounded how I wanted. So like I cut out some of like the I did in the live show and things like that. But overall, yeah, now it's like kind of where I want it, and I'm really proud of like all the material and everything. It's kind of like the greatest hits of everything I've been working on in the last 12 years. So some of it's newer, some of it's older, but it's all my favorite jokes, and so I'm excited to like actually have people see like a full hour of my stand up at some point. So maybe I'll be selling that online soon or something once it's finally edited. But yeah, the guy who did it is great and has worked in like TV filming and editing and stuff. So I'm really excited for people to see that hopefully in the near future.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to see that too, man.
And the album, yeah, should be out soon as well. And so that'll be on streaming services and things like that. And we're kind of having an artist design the cover now. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, for all of that to come out soon, hopefully.
Well, this is an interesting. This can actually tie into the first question we have. And first, Dennis Tooley says it could have been worse. It could have been a video of your parents getting busy. So I guess there's always a silver lining there.
Maybe my parents were the ones that uploaded all the
Yeah,
that
right.
really messed up.
How do we
That's
know it
how,
wasn't your parents either? Because if it didn't show their faces.
that's a good point. Yeah, it was just a screen sharing thing. They really like to prank me, I guess maybe.
Oh, and Lauren says she saw Jacob last month and he was great. Very excited for the special.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. What show was that? I'm curious. Can she tell me what show?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. This is live, so they'll be able to interact back and forth. So,
Oh, cool. And if I want to see it live, I think I have to be. Is it in the Facebook app or?
yeah, it's in the Hot Breath Comedy Network Facebook group.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, if you get on Facebook, you can see us in there live. But I believe
Okay,
Lauren
cool.
actually saw you post about this on your Instagram, and then
Oh,
she joined the group after that. So the Jacob
okay.
Jacob fans are out there. So yeah,
I will
Lauren.
say, in terms of the last thing, I don't think it could have been my parents because even though my parents had me biologically, they're so nerdy. I'm pretty sure they're both still virgins. Anyway, that's the last thing I'll say about.
I
I
love
don't know why.
you're like, hold on, let me get this punchline in. Let me couch this tag in really quick.
I don't know why. I think most people would probably try to move on when someone brings up their parents having sex, but
Be like, no,
really,
I have a funny tag for it.
I like to really stay on that topic as long as possible.
Oh, Lauren says she was with Andrea Allen at Two
Oh
Boots.
yeah, yeah, that was a really fun show. I did that maybe a couple weeks ago. There was this pizza place called Two Boots in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and it was great. It was like a sold out show. I mean, it was like rows and rows of people just packed in there. So yeah, one of the most fun shows I've done in a while.
Oh,
So I'm
great.
really glad she. And one of the last shows I'll do for a while, I guess too, unfortunately. But yeah, it was
Unfortunately,
fun.
yeah. Oh, well, that's great. Well, you got a fan in Lauren. Thanks, Lauren. If you have a question for Jacob, please comment with it. We'll get it answered. Dennis actually asked, "Have you ever tried to turn one of your bits into a sketch?"
Have I ever tried to turn one of my bits into a sketch? That's a good question. I do like sketch comedy as well, and I actually have written out like scripts of based on my bits where I kind of tried to turn them into sketches. I haven't filmed a lot of that, but I did take all of the sketch writing classes and improv classes at UCB. So I've written a lot of sketches that kind of were separate from my stand-up material, and I feel like that's something eventually, if all of this, if we're able to interact with each other in person again as a society, I'd like to maybe film more of those and try to get those out there in some way. Because yeah, some of the sketches I've written, I'm super proud of, but a lot of times my brain kind of like works differently. It feels like different muscles for me sometimes. I think with my stand up, I a lot of times gravitate towards just like either talking about experiences I've had or doing like one liners and different short form jokes. Whereas with sketches, I kind of try to embrace their style of like focusing on like, I guess what the UCB calls the game, and like having an unusual
Yeah.
thing that you can like kind of repeat over and over and like heighten the joke with different moves and kind of left turns, but it's kind of more focused on like one emotion the whole time or one bizarre thing that you can keep like riffing on. So yeah, so I guess in that sense, it's I don't know. I'd like to put more sketches out there and stuff, whether it's similar to my stand up or some of the other ones I've worked on that are kind of their own thing. So yeah, so hopefully I'll figure out a way to do that in the situation, or just maybe do it in the future once we can actually film things that are a little more complicated and everything. So yeah, I'd love to try more things like that.
Yeah, because you even see comics now, they may have like a special out, but then they'll even do like an animated version of whatever it is they're talking about. Like people are always looking for different ways to repurpose their material.
Yeah, that's
And
a good point.
even like it seems like the big trend right now is that you record a bit, put a catchy headline at the top, and then put subtitles underneath it. And it seems like everyone's just pouring a bunch of like content out with that template in mind. But I feel like there's got to be other ways.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd like to put out more things like that, and I do have now. Yeah, I guess like an hour of recorded material that I might start doing that with soon. But yeah, it's so hard to keep up, and I think in a good way. It's like I think it's so cool that so many comedians are putting out great stuff with between bits and sketches and everything. And yeah, I know like for me sometimes I get kind of intimidated by that in terms of like stepping out of my comfort zone. I mean, I've done like stand up and stuff a lot, but now
Mm-hmm.
I'm inspired to see people like trying out so many other things, like, you know, like that you're doing this podcast and things like that. Even that I haven't like started my own podcast or anything. So it's cool to see people trying all these new avenues and all various ways of being funny, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sure you're not alone in that intimidation. I mean, we all can have self-doubt and feel like, "Oh, that's good for them, but I could never" type deal. I mean, what is that? What is that self-doubt and how do you overcome it? Because from comics like us listening and me watching you, it's like, "Oh, that guy's been on Colbert, he's been on Wild and Out, he's been on America's Got Talent, he's Comedy Central. Like this guy's got it figured out, but yet you still have that self-doubt of like how like who am I to think that way? How do you overcome those sort of hurdles?
Yeah, I think for me, yeah, I try to push myself to go outside of my comfort zone. But yeah, it's funny how like even, yeah, having done stand up on TV a bunch or doing Wild and Out and improv stuff on TV, like now that I've done it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I was able to do that. But then looking into things I haven't done that I think would be a lot of fun. I get like, I think because I do enjoy the creative stuff so much of just making jokes or things like that, it makes me feel like, oh no, now I'm gonna have to like figure out how to edit podcasts or put them online, or like I think that for me, like the more technical things are like the biggest hurdle for me. So like that's kind of like something where I just have to embrace the challenges more, I guess, and kind of just go with it, because I think naturally I have a lot of anxiety in general about everything that can go wrong. So sometimes I forget like how scary stand up was when I first started doing it, because now it's like, okay, now I'm used to that. But then when I have that for a new thing, I have to remind myself like, oh, I can't just like stay in the things I'm used to. Like I think it's always good to push yourself to new things. So I'm glad at least I've been able to get out of my comfort zone a bit with improv and stand up and stuff. But I would like to go much further in terms of doing more sketches and doing more podcast type things and things like that. So yeah, I think it's something where you kind of have to like, I think we all have to do that, where we just push ourselves into that stuff, even when it's scary. And it's definitely, I'm mostly just giving advice to myself at this point, but
good self-talk.
Yeah.
It's good self-talk.
Yeah, and especially now with like so many live shows shut down and stuff. Yeah, now it's like it's so important to try all these new things. So I'm excited to see what everyone's doing and kind of try to explore that as well and see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, how do you overcome anxiety? What have you found to be most useful?
That's a good question. I feel like yeah, I have a lot of anxiety in general, but things that have helped me lately are kind of just committing to like doing habits of things I want to do, even if I feel anxious about it. And I feel like just I've been like, at least during the quarantine, I've kind of started habits of like working out every day, which I think blows off a lot of stress, and then writing jokes for an hour a day. I think like gets rid of some of my anxiety of like, oh, I'm not like doing enough. Because in general, yeah, a lot of times whatever I'm doing, I'm like, oh, what if I'm missing out on something else or whatever. And so I think a lot of it just comes down to like just trying to like look at all the things that I'm grateful for and just trying to like enjoy whatever choice I do make and making the most out of it. And then realizing I can, you know, if there's something else I want to try, I can try that next. So I think just, yeah, kind of trying to start new habits with small things where like if I'm trying to read more, just like reading like a paragraph and then trying to celebrate that. And so then you have like a positive emotion with it, and it's not like a chore. So then you can kind of like, once you're in that frame of mind, then you're like, oh, this is fun. And then you might just keep doing whatever the new hobby is, like reading for hours or whatever. But I think getting started is the hardest part. So I can be like pretty self-critical in general. So I'm kind of just trying to learn how to do those things where it's more like self-care and things like that. And it's funny because that actually like makes me more productive, even though in the moment I'm like, oh, I'm not working hard enough or whatever. But when I'm in that positive state of mind or rewarding myself for doing little things, then it just makes me want to do that more and keep pursuing it and writing more or whatever it is. So
Yeah,
those are
I
some.
love that small, the big victory for a small like accomplishment. I'll even for writing, if I write the date at the top of the page, I'm like, oh, cool, I wrote today. Everything else from here on out is just extra credit. You know, I really set a low bar, and that helps me to really jump over it.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. There was something I heard about. I think there's a book called like Tiny Habits or something
Uh
that
huh.
I kind of heard that strategy from just recently. But yeah, I think that's a really good way to go for sure.
And you writing an hour a day, and people keep commenting with your questions. We'll keep weaving those in here, but I do want to get into like a big topic on here is writing, and you saying that you're consistently writing for an hour a day. How did you work up to that habit, and also what does your writing look like?
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, I guess that's an example of something I tried that is, I guess, a little bit of a bigger step for me. But basically, I was kind of just frustrated that I felt like I wasn't writing enough because whenever I'd sit down to write, I'd get distracted and think like, oh, maybe I should be sending this email instead or doing this other thing. And then I'd end up like procrastinating it, and I felt like I wasn't really developing as much material as I wanted. But that kind of was partly an idea of my therapist. I think like doing therapy has been super helpful, and I'm really lucky to have a therapist who I found who's affordable and works with comedians and has been really great.
Great.
But basically, but yeah, that was kind of one of his ideas of like, since I was stressed out about not writing enough, to kind of just have a goal in mind like that. And so far, I think I've done it for, I guess, like maybe 3 weeks in a row now,
Whoa.
every day writing. And so, yeah, so it's been tough a lot of days. And sometimes I didn't get to it until like late at night after doing other things, but I've kind of stuck with it. And usually if I do just sit down and write jokes for an hour, even if 99% of them are not good, I do end up getting something out of it that I like. And so I think it pays off. That's like kind of something I learned, that like, even if it doesn't feel immediately like it's going well, it's still, I think, is worth doing. And usually by the end of it, I feel super happy that I did it and I have something to show for it. But yeah, for me, yeah, so a lot of times I'll just sit down with a notebook and just write jokes for an hour, or sometimes I'll use that time as a combo of rewriting jokes that I had before that like weren't really working. So I'll write it out until I'm like, oh, here's the version that makes more sense. And or sometimes while I'm doing it, I'll be listening to like sets that I did the day before that I tried, like jokes online, and rewriting those and things like that. So it's kind of a combination of things, but yeah, I feel like writing by hand for me at least works a lot in terms of like first coming up with it, and then later I might type it up and tweet some of them or things like that. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's something I would definitely recommend to any comedian, just trying to find the time to do that, because it's been super helpful to me, and everything. So I think for anyone, yeah, it's definitely worth doing. But I know how, yeah, it can definitely be intimidating to think like, oh, that's so much time. But I feel like usually there's a time in the day, and especially now that we're all like traveling less and stuff, that
Exactly.
a good hobby to have, or a good practice.
Yeah, I started like I realized if I don't write in the morning that I won't write. So I started this like Write 10 Club here on Facebook, where every morning at 10 a.m. I get on Facebook Live and I'll just write for 10 minutes. And people are
Nice.
starting to tune in that are also wanting to like start their own writing routine. And it's
Hmm.
like 10 minutes out of 24 hours. You know, it's like a small, attainable goal. Like
Yeah,
Dennis just commented with like, you know, set low expectations and celebrate when you exceed those expectations.
exactly.
It's like, if you can write 10 minutes, cool, check it off the list. Sometimes it grows into 20, 40 an hour sometimes. But as long as I write for 10 minutes at this point, I'll check it off the list. And it doesn't even have to be joke writing. I'll journal sometimes. I'll just
Yeah.
brainstorm. It's not every day I'm sitting down trying to like reinvent comedy or create the next big wave, you know, like you mentioned having the minds or like that thought that I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. And I feel like every comedian goes through that. And I think
Mhm.
having these small victories throughout your day help you to kind of quell that self doubt behind, well, I should be doing more.
Yeah.
So and so did X, Y, and Z, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's something that's still I still have to constantly remind myself is to like, yeah, celebrate those moments because otherwise, if I'm not enjoying it, I might be less likely to keep it up. But you mentioned writing in the morning, which I think is also super helpful. So yeah, actually, in addition to the joke writing, I do try to actually journal like 3 pages in the morning, which is something I heard in the Artist Way, and I
Yeah.
read that book a couple of times. Is highly recommended to basically, I think anyone, whatever your job is. But yeah, the two main things I got out of it were yeah, writing 3 pages of stream of consciousness in the morning just to like clear your head and that kind of thing, and then also doing something they call an artist day each week, which is like just doing something for fun for yourself by yourself and just enjoying like, well, now it's hard to do some of this stuff because some of it was like going to a museum or things like that, but
Right.
you can still like maybe go spend some time in a park or play an instrument or do something just like for fun. And even though it's not technically working, a lot of times that actually that's the stuff that makes you feel inspired and actually breathes a lot of new life into like once you are back at work, you feel kind of refreshed or full of ideas. So those are like two main things that have definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah, I haven't gotten through that book. I've read some of it, but I've talked to several people who found it super helpful. So that'll be a good resource for listeners to find.
Yeah, that book, yeah, The Artist Way is great. I read it once by myself and it was helpful, but I found it even more helpful the second time when I read it. Every week I'd meet up with a group of basically a lot of comedians and other actors and stuff, and we'd read the chapter together, and then we'd check in about how we felt like it was affecting us and debate whether we agreed with stuff in it. But
Oh,
I think that
interesting.
was actually
Yeah.
super helpful because then you have like the accountability of like, okay, now I can like I'm excited to not only do this artist date, but I feel like a positive pressure to do it, and I'm excited to like tell people about it and how it helped me. And I think there's this other book I read recently that I think a lot of people would like called The War of Art. Yeah, The War of Art.
I've heard of that. Okay.
That one's a quick read, and it's kind of a different angle, but super helpful in terms of he kind of points out that like the hard part about art or writing or anything that you're trying to do creatively isn't actually doing it but just getting started. So he's all about like resistance is actually the enemy. So a
Hmm.
lot of times when we have all these nebulous things that we're like, oh, I have to worry about this and this, it kind of all falls in the category of resistance. So if you're just training yourself to fight resistance each day and like just to get started, basically getting started is the hardest part, like what we've said. So that's kind of his main point, but I feel like he says it pretty concisely. It's a quick read, and I think it's super helpful too to anyone just in terms of like procrastinating less and stuff.
Yeah, I think
So
that accountability is huge, which is why I do the Right 10 Club, just because it is like a form of social accountability. And you mentioned at the
yeah,
beginning of this, they you mentioned you actually going over jokes with comedians. Like, you guys are online, like just spitballing jokes to each other? What does that look like? I think more comics could be doing that right now.
yeah. There's a small group of comedians where we'll basically just each take turns and run a few jokes, and a lot of it is not necessarily even going into feedback about it, but just saying it to another person in a small group has been super helpful. So yeah, especially now that there's not really any form of live shows, so things like that, and also running jokes. I've done similar things that are like Instagram live shows where they're
Hmm.
set up as a stand-up show. So it's a little weird sometimes just saying your jokes and like maybe a bunch of people are listening, but you can only see one person reacting and stuff. But it's still another way of things like anything like that has been helpful to just actually keep telling jokes with someone listening, even if it's not in the same room. You can kind of still, I guess, see at least one person's reaction or a few people's reaction in like a Zoom chat or things like that. So and I think that's another thing that's helped me write a lot because then I'm like, oh, I did it yesterday, and now today they're doing it again. So it's like I want to write new stuff so they're not just seeing me say the same things. So
Yeah.
yeah, those kind of online communities. And then I've been doing that with improv too. Like I did an improv practice with people in like England yesterday, and like then one with people in like Idaho and stuff because people are can kind of Zoom like use it from wherever.
Oh, that's
So
so
it's kind of
cool.
interesting to like do improv with people that are like 5 hour time difference across the ocean and stuff. But yeah, I think having the both the improv muscle and the stand up muscle, like being able to use them a little bit during this time has been super helpful. So yeah, I feel like it's important to just ask around and find any things like that that are available, you know.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of comedians post things like, "Oh, I missed the stage," or "Oh, this is getting boring," or something. But it's like,
Mm.
I mean, I feel like this is for everyone, but I think if we're going to keep it comedy centric, it is just like focus on what you can control. How can you make the most out of this opportunity? How can you make the most out of your time? And I think a very, like we're talking about, finding small victories to build upon. I think simply posting, "Hey, I'd like to get a writing group together," like you and I are talking about right now online to pitch jokes and just start a social accountability circle, even if it's you and just one other comic for the time being, and it organically grows from there if it does. It's just creating and holding each other accountable instead of us like kind of wallowing, and we think comedy's still the most important. I mean, look, I'm like, yo, the world may be ending, but I got to do this Skype Q&A with Jacob cuz the comedians need to know. I mean, we still think comedy is like the most important thing in the world, but I think that's a good thing for comics as I've been thinking of different ways to be productive during this and looking at how other comedians are using their time wisely. I think that's a great one I haven't heard is actually just having social accountability groups where you spitball jokes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually Lauren says if I want to get writing done, I set aside proper free time for myself that day, and it stops me procrastinating because I think I can do this BuzzFeed quiz later during my free time instead of right now when I'm supposed to be writing. So she almost
Yeah.
puts a carrot at the end of the stick. So she's like, "Oh, if I cross this bridge of writing, I get to like the pot of gold on the other side or something like that." So that's interesting. Yeah, almost a reward system in place. So that's good. She actually
Mm-hmm.
also asked to, what Jacob, what joke slash comeback from Wild and Out are you proudest of?
What joke or comeback am I
Hmm.
proudest of on Wild Nut? That's a
Mm-hmm.
good question. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. There's some that uh, yeah, I don't know. There's one with Matt Rife that I feel like went pretty well that I was happy with because I kind of just came up with it in the moment, and it was something about like he said I looked like Jared from Subway, and he's like really Matt was really young at the time, so I was like, you look like you got molested by Jared from Subway, which but it was, I mean, I guess it was phrased differently. It was all rhyming in a rap battle, but I did think of that in the moment, it was like right when all of the Subway scandal stuff was happening. Now I don't know if that joke has aged that well now that I think about it, but basically, at the time I was happy with it, and I think maybe my first rap battle that aired ever against Nick Cannon, that was kind of exciting to like actually be in my first season and get to basically like make fun of him to his face. And I think it was something about how like he was married to Mariah, so he has a lot of clout. But does he ever get lonely when she puts him in timeout? Because they were still married at the time and everything. But that was a pretty fun moment to think like he was the one that got me on the show, and yet he's like my job is to make fun of him, which is like a lot of people don't get to make fun of their boss in that way. So to do it and to actually get paid to do it and rewarded for that is like was pretty awesome. Yeah, so there were some other fun moments on there, but in general, yeah, it's just that's always a fun job. And I think I'll be on a couple episodes of season 15, and then we were talking about shooting season 16, but obviously it's postponed for the moment. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get to do that soon.
How many seasons have you been on there?
Well, I did eight. I guess I actually I did 8 seasons that have aired, and then I actually did tape some episodes on a ninth season. So I've performed on, I guess, 9 different seasons.
Wow. That's so cool, man.
But yeah, they're really great about streamlining everything, and they can kind of film it really quickly, and it's basically all improvised. So it's only takes a couple hours to shoot, and unlike other things, you don't have to like rehearse it a lot or at all really. And so they can film like 2 or 3 a day because you're kind of just trying to make the most of the moment, and then they just edit it down to the stuff that worked best. But it's been pretty much a dream job, I guess. So I'm so happy to have had that plus stand up. And yeah, hopefully, I'm hoping they both come back at some point. But yeah, it was a.
What percentage would you say is improvised versus like written prepared material?
I'd say it's definitely almost all improvised, but there's definitely moments where like if you're gonna do like a rap battle at the end, so you can maybe like look at who's on the other team and think like, okay, I can start thinking of stuff and try to plan it. But then a lot of times it ends up going in a different direction because like they might say something crazy and then you have to like try to top that. So I feel like my favorite stuff I've done is always improvised, but there's some things where you can if it's like a funny pickup line game, you can sometimes think of that ahead of time or things like that. So it's kind of like almost a mix, I feel like, of improv and stand up where you're kind of writing on the fly, but also like coming up with stuff just literally on stage and then trying to think of anything you can, but knowing that you might have to totally change it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's so cool you're on there as well. You add such a fun flavor to the show, and that's why you've been on there so long, is because it plays well with the chemistry of that show. So it's cool. It's cool you can match all that high energy and you can still like bring it to your level and it still kills. I mean, that's just a testament to like your comedic timing and your self-awareness being in that environment. Because I mean, I've seen tapings and I've done auditions for Wild and Out, and like when you're in the middle of it, it's kind of like it can be intimidating. I mean, there's a lot going on,
Yeah, for sure.
We have another good question here. This is from John Chappelle. He asks, "Who
Chappelle?
are Chappelle? Chapel Chappelle? He looks like a white guy, so I'm assuming he's not related, and it's spelled differently. But maybe that's his stage name.
Okay.
So it's
I still haven't figured out how to access this group chat, but thank you. That's all right.
Oh, in the Facebook group, you're saying?
Oh, I see. Okay, I think I see it now.
Yeah, it's in the Facebook group, and then I'm recording with something called Ecamm, which
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's like a third party app that I can live stream through, and then I can pull up people's comments onto the screen and do like the cool sound effects, like the applause you like so much at the beginning. So.
Okay. Oh, this is great. No, I see it now. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
So yeah, I've been really enjoying it. Actually, I have an affiliate link if anyone wants to get their own Ecamm subscription. I have an affiliate link so you can support the Joeliverse. That's my Venmo comedy show. I'm pushing Ecamm Live affiliate links.
Awesome.
I'll link it in the show notes. So John asks, who are Jacob's comedic influences, and what specials do you think are helpful to learn body language? Ooh.
Okay. So comedic influences and specials that are helpful to learn body language. I mean, some of my favorite comedians, I love Mike Birbiglia. I think he's got some comedy that is surprisingly kind of moving as like a emotional story, as in addition to being like funny with jokes the whole time. So like his albums, like Sleepwalk with Me, the album, which is like one of my favorites ever, or My Girlfriend's Boyfriend. Those are pretty great. I think in terms of also body language, he's able to like really deliver and commit really hard to the physicality of a lot of the jokes and embodying characters, but the writing and storytelling is really strong. And I cried at the end of both of those actually,
Oh,
which is like
wow.
pretty unusual for a stand-up show to cry emotional, be emotionally invested, like to the degree of like watching a Pixar movie or something. So so I'd highly recommend those, especially the Sleepwalk with Me and My Girlfriend's Boyfriend albums, or I think the special of My Girlfriend's Boyfriend is on Netflix. I don't think there's a special of the other one, but it's worth listening to the album for sure. And I always, when I was starting out, Dimitri Martin was kind of the first person I saw that was doing lower energy stuff. That was it kind of made me realize, like, because I was kind of shy and quiet growing up, I didn't realize that you could kind of be yourself on stage, and you didn't. It wasn't a job exclusively for people that were naturally super loud or aggressive or confident. So that was kind of what first got me thinking, like, maybe I should try this out. When I saw Dimitri Martin, I think on his first like Conan appearance when I was in high school. But there's so many great specials and comedians now. So, I mean, yeah, it's hard to keep track, but I love the new specials I've seen from like Michelle Wolf, Amy Schumer,
Killer. Yeah.
Nikki Glaser is great. I mean, I love Tom Segura, and he's super nice as well, which, is awesome. And let me think.
Have you worked with him, Tom?
Years ago, I featured for him at this amazing club in Madison, Wisconsin. And he was just super funny and super nice, like super funny on stage, but super nice and funny off stage. Like there were things that were happening to him in real time with like weird interactions with fans from the audience that would happen, and then he'd just tell us about it in the green room immediately afterwards, and it already sounded like as funny as like a worked out stand-up bit, but he just has this like great perspective, and the way he describes things, and or maybe experiences the world, like he's just able to like portray that in such a like funny and engaging way. So and he was also just super nice to me at all the other comics. Like I ran into him years after that, like festivals and stuff, and he was like a huge deal at that point, where it was like there's no reason for him to talk to me, but he was like, oh no, he was like giving me all these compliments on stuff I was doing. I'm like, I don't even know why you're aware of that, like you have so much other stuff going on. But yeah, he's a really good guy, and super hilarious on and off stage. But yeah, there's a lot of great special. I just watched Ronnie Chang's special. It was amazing, and I've been trying to watch as many as I can. There's so many great ones I'm sure I haven't even gotten to yet. But I mean, I always like Bill Burr's comedy, because he's able to pull off so many like edgy angles in a way that I've never come that close to. Most of my stuff is pretty safe and clean, but it's like it's so inspiring to watch someone do that kind of thing, where he like can take those chances and yet end up actually coming from a good place, but being able to risk those kind of like tricky premises is really impressive.
Exactly. Yeah, the Ronnie Chang one's great. I just watched that one a few days ago. It's very good. And his is a good one of like an example of like committing to a bit. Like he really commits to a bit. Do you see him out and about in the New York scene, like working out stuff?
Yeah, I saw him recently before all the stuff happened at New York Comedy Club, and just doing brand new like killer stuff. And his physicality and just like the writing is so good and the jokes already, but the fact that he can like heighten it so much and keep like topping it with more and more, like a lot of the first lines of his jokes is like, what if I had that, I would just tell it and then move on, and I probably wouldn't sell it, but he like sells that really hard, but then he's like tops that with like an even better punchline, and the way he like acts things out physically and adds new jokes just from the act outs is like super impressive. So yeah, he's so much fun to watch. I've only met him maybe once or twice briefly, so I don't really know him, but just from watching him around town, yeah, he's always crushes it. He's one of the best comedians I think right now for sure.
You said that Mike Birbiglia and Dimitri Martin were like at the top of your list. Have you got to work with them or meet them?
Yeah, I think I've met them both briefly like a long time ago, and yeah, at the time that I met Birbiglia, I was like so obsessed with his albums and stuff that it was like I almost didn't think he was a real person, and I was super intimidated, more so than like anyone else I've met. That was like if I met other famous people and stuff, I think just because I'd heard his album so much. So
Very cool.
yeah, so it's been fun to watch him. Even now, he's doing like some fun Instagram live videos and things, doing fundraising for Comedy Club waitstaff, which is really good. So yeah, and then I think I went to Dimitri Martin's show years ago, and he signed a book that I bought of his and was nice and everything. So it's been kind of cool to like get to see those kind of people live. Oh yeah, some other specials I just thought of recently. I mean, I loved like Sam Morrill's new special on YouTube, and
Yes.
also Taylor Lanson's was great on Netflix. But yeah, so I'm sure when I met Birbiglia, it was I'm sure I was super awkward, but I'm glad I got to say hi and everything, and I'm definitely still a big fan. And yeah, I'm so happy there's just so many great comedians out there now, because it makes me feel always like I have to like step my game up and try to get better. There's always like so many good people right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And even in talking about the actual comedic process, Trent has a good question here about your personal evolution of comedy. And Trent Babb asked, did you go through different voice fluctuations on your comedy journey? Different tones of delivering a punchline, accenting the last word, deadpan, tone goes up, etc.?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, it's funny because a lot of people think that I don't have any tone change at any time, both on stage or in my real life. And I guess I do tend to like sound kind of like I have a monotone at all times. But it's funny because, yeah, I do try to work on that. And I think that stuff does make a huge difference. And sometimes with more, some people it's more clear if they're like super high energy and they're really selling a joke. But yeah, like for me on stand up or Wild N' Out or something, I've found that like a lot of jokes they don't work unless you have to really deliver them a certain way. So I think it is important to find those moments of like, even if it is more subtle, like the way I do it, I'd love to commit even more or way more, but yeah, I think even at this, if you are kind of telling things in not a lot of range like I do, it is still, yeah, I definitely think about that stuff a lot, and it's still super important and can make or break a set. And so even though someone else might be like, oh, that sounded like a monotone, like it's still is gonna pop if you say it a certain way, and it's not if you say it a different way. So yeah, you definitely have to like emphasize certain words sometimes, or pause and stuff. I think I have like fallen back sometimes on like trying to like focus a lot on the writing, and sometimes that can make it easier to get away with certain jokes without selling them. But at the same time, I've been pushing myself lately to like remember to really be in the moment and figure out how to sell it in my own way, even if it's not, the biggest act out or something that someone else might be able to do. So I think like doing improv, where I sometimes do try more like emotional stuff for characters, has helped a lot. So yeah, I definitely try to like bring that into my stand up, but yeah, I'm probably way behind in that delivery department than a lot of people, but in my own way, I do. Yeah, I think it's so important to think about that stuff and just try to figure out how to sell the joke, but also be genuine to yourself in how you do it,
So you will maybe, when you're approaching a punchline, when you say the punchline, you may say the punchline with a different tone or a different volume as opposed to the rest of the joke?
Yeah, I think depending on the joke, I think a lot of times I might not necessarily change much up, but yeah, I do try to like maybe emphasize that that was the joke, or if so, like some of my jokes might be a little more corny or something, so then I might try to make it clear like I'm saying it in a maybe an overly jokey way just to make it clear that I'm aware that it's like a silly joke or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of times I do still do like deadpan and stuff, which can work too, but that can be tricky with certain audiences if they miss the joke, because then it's like, oh, they might have like just maybe because I didn't change my voice, they like didn't recognize that that was a punchline because it was
Oh.
kind of too. Sometimes I've written stuff that's like maybe too subtle or too overcomplicated or whatever. So yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it's important to just yeah, find a delivery that works and everything without it seeming, without it being forced. But yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
just trial and error and trying different things and saying it how you would say it to a friend if you were trying to make them laugh. And that's just a lot of testing out different things and seeing what feels right.
Exactly. Yeah, I like how you said trial and error, and then it's like saying something that you would say to a friend that's funny and translating it
Yeah.
to a live audience. And that's the difficult. I mean, that is the difficult part. And I remember hearing Jerry Seinfeld say maybe for like the first 10 years, his comedy was just like from like his nose to his chin. There was no
Yeah.
physicality. The delivery wasn't really honed in. Like, I mean, that was for me personally. I'm just now, I'm 10 years in, and I'm just now like, okay, how can I incorporate more physicality? Or I'm becoming a little more
Yeah.
intentional about it. But for the longest time, I was really all about the writing. And especially early on and starting out in comedy, I think the writing will help you, like you said, get away with a lot more than if you're just trying to deliver it a certain way. I think starting with writing first is a great foundation that then you can start to build on. And a lot of your delivery develops from just being on stage a lot and just saying the
Yeah.
jokes over and over again. And those natural inflections and those natural tones and physicalities will start to kind of organically grow out of the confidence you have in those words you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think stage time is super important.
Yep.
And like you said, just a lot of trying it out. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I will say something in conversation that gets a laugh, but I'm able to maybe get it to work on stage later because it came from a genuine place. So I think it's kind of, yeah, I think that's always good to recreate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're trying to make friends laugh, you're not really trying. It's just like fun. So that you can find ways to channel that type of part that's genuine to you on stage. I think that's helpful.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
mentioned Seinfeld. I saw him recently a couple months ago at the Beacon, and so yeah, it was cool to see him. How much now he does like physicality, and he's in this huge theater where he's like running around the stage and acting things out. And so yeah, it's awesome to see like how many levels he has at this point. Obviously, he's doing very well. Everyone knows, but yeah,
Just a little bit. Yeah.
the action.
Dude, that's great. All right. We just have just one more here. Oh, Lauren said it's dinner time in the UK, so I have to go. We'll watch the rest back after. That's
Oh, cool. All
great.
right, I learned.
Yeah, man, we've had viewers like from India, Ireland, Canada,
Awesome.
like yeah, people all over the world are watching this. So this is
That's great.
great. So let's see the final. Okay, this is actually from the same person, so maybe we can kind of combine them. But Dennis Tooley asks, um, you mentioned having a pretty clean set. How important do you think it is to be able to work clean? And he actually owns a comedy club in Greenwood, Indiana called Gutties. I was
Oh,
actually
awesome.
up there headlining last year, pre-quarantine, and their whole brand is like clean, family-friendly club.
Oh, cool.
So from your experience being in comedy, did you say 12 years?
Yeah, I guess 12 and a half. It'll be like 13 in this September. So yeah, maybe like
Nice.
12 and a half years. I think that's right. I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So how
Uh,
important do you think it is to be able to work clean?
that's a good question. Yeah, I think, yeah, working clean can be super helpful, especially in getting to do more shows and getting to do a lot of
Mhm.
awesome shows. And, so, I mean, I was exclusively clean for a long time. I started out, just because, I would do these, like a lot of my first headlining shows were like in my hometown. And so my whole family would be there. So it wasn't anything anyone else imposed on me, but just in my own mind, I was like, okay, I don't want to like talk about certain things in front of like literally all my grandparents, and my parents would be there and stuff. So, now I do have some stuff that's not clean, but I still have a ton of clean stuff and definitely over an hour of clean stuff. So, I think that ended up working in my favor a lot, and especially later on. Just, I know comedy is all about. I think it is important also to express yourself and be genuine, but in terms of just financially, to have clean stuff can really pay off in the long run if you find, especially if it's something you gravitate towards and enjoy. Because, yeah, as much as like I don't want to tell anyone to censor themselves, but the more clean stuff you have, later on, there's a lot of colleges expect that and they pay well. And then even on Sirius XM, I've heard like there's so many fewer tracks available for the clean channel. So the comedians that have like fully clean albums or even a few clean tracks can make so much money on there because they play it so many times. Whereas on a channel where it's explicit, there are, it's just kind of inundated with so many more that it's just harder to get as much airtime. And you get paid each time that happens from what I've heard. I'm still waiting for my album to come out down the road. But yeah, so kind of at every level, there's fun church shows, there's fun college shows, corporate shows, and in the past cruises. I don't know if that'll still happen, but there's a lot of opportunities where they expect you to be clean. So, yeah, I wouldn't say to necessarily censor yourself in general in writing or anything, but if you can at least have in your arsenal a lot of clean stuff and have the ability to be
Yes.
clean for a long set when needed, then it's great to have that. And just you'll have a lot more opportunities.
Yeah, and I like how you said it's like if it comes naturally to you. I mean, if it's something you're authentically are gravitated towards, then by all means follow that. For me, like I when I started comedy, I set the bar that I wanted to be clean, just so I could entertain as many people as possible. And I'm in your belief system that I don't tell people what they should or shouldn't do. We all sing a different song up there, and I like that everyone has the freedom to do that, and I don't really care what someone else does as long as it's funny, you know. But for me, I knew that I would be able to entertain more people, and I have found 10 years into this, I have booked a lot more work just from being clean. I perform at random golf club outings, at like
Yeah.
country clubs and people's birthday parties and hosting like corporate award shows. And a lot of that work, and like you said, colleges, and a lot of that work, the number one criteria a lot of the time is, are you clean or not? I mean,
Yeah.
that's really like that really gets you in the door at a lot of places. But even like you said, even if you're not completely clean, having the ability to go clean will really open up some doors for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So and the final one, this is actually from Dennis too, and he said if the quarantine life is the new normal. Hold on. Let me throw this on the screen. That's always a fun effect. If the quarantine life is the new normal, what three things will you focus on in order to get your comedy fix?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely weird to have all these various avenues of live shows out of the picture, but I think the three things I'd focus on, I guess I'd have to say it, like the writing an hour a day has been super helpful. So yeah, I think writing every day, and also just putting things out there online in any way you can, like over Skype like this or over Zoom or whatever it is. Just any way that you can keep telling your jokes to other person so you have that muscle, because that's kind of the equivalent right now of stage time and writing, which are the two important things. So yeah, and just always kind of, I think, going out of your comfort zone as well in terms of finding new things to do, just because it is such an unusual situation and it might last a long time. So finding out how you can, do shows in new ways or try new things with sketches or podcasts or whatever it is. So I think those are like kind of the main things to
So you
figure out right now.
said writing every day. What was the second one you said?
Yeah, I guess performing as much as
Performing
possible
as much as
online
possible.
and however you can.
And then getting
And
out of your comfort zone, like maybe trying to start a podcast or do more
yeah,
sketches and things like that.
yeah,
Perfect.
and that kind of varies per person. But yeah, whatever kind of new types of comedy you haven't tried yet, it's a good time to try them all.
Oh man, that is great. Yeah, great advice there. Are you in New York still, by the way?
Yeah, I'm still in
Oh
New
my
York right now,
gosh,
so
Jacob. My man, we miss
yeah,
you. I hope you're safe
yeah,
there, man. Are you just like cooped up in an apartment right now?
yeah. I've kind of just been staying in my apartment a lot, and so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all turns out. But yeah,
Well, we're here for you at the Hot Breathiverse, Jacob. If you ever need anything,
awesome.
feel free to hang out where we did this live Q&A in this comedy group. If you ever feel like interacting with other comics, there's right now we're at almost 400, and it's like people, comics from around the world. We're on every continent but
Great.
Antarctica so far. So it's been very cool to get to do these live Q&As with comedians of your caliber. So we really do appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having me. Always legit. Yeah, always a lot of fun.
Is there anything else you want the world to know before we get out of here?
Not much. Yeah, I guess if people want to stay in touch, they can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Jacob Williams, and I'll be posting a lot of like new jokes and things like that. And if I do any more like streamed shows over Zoom or something, I'll post about that on there. And if you go to my website, you won't see any tour dates right now, but that's jacobwilliamscomedy.com. And so yeah, if they follow me on there, I'll also announce once I'm putting out like a special and album and everything like that. So I'm excited to hopefully do that soon.
Love it, man. Love it. Yeah, well, whenever that album and special comes out, please let us know here, and we will help you promote it however we can, man. We're big fans here.
Likewise, thanks. Yeah, it's always a good time. So,
All right. Well, thank you, Jacob. Stay safe out there, buddy.
all right, you too. Thanks, Joel. Have a good one.